My spoiled sister owes $40K to loan sharks. My parents demanded I pay everything, but I exposed them, and now they call me the villain. I'm 30 years old. I work in finance and have been doing so for like 8 years. And I need to tell this story because I've literally spent my entire life carrying the weight of being the invisible child, while my sister Mia has been the spoiled princess of the family. And everything exploded a few months ago in a way that I still have trouble processing. The thing is, I always knew my parents preferred her. I mean, it wasn't subtle or anything like that. It was obvious for as long as I can remember, but I never thought they would go as far as they did. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand all the context, because this isn't just about what happened a few months ago. This has been dragging on since we were kids. Mia is 3 years younger than me. She's 27 now, and since she was born, she basically became the center of my parents' universe. I was 3 when she arrived, and honestly, I don't remember much from before that, but what I do remember perfectly is how everything changed after. My parents, especially my mom, acted like Mia was this precious and fragile thing that needed all their attention all the time, and I simply stopped existing for them. It's not like they mistreated me or anything like that, but it was like I was invisible, you know? When Mia cried, my mom would run. When I cried, they told me I was already big and to stop acting like a baby. When Mia got good grades, it was a complete family celebration, with cake and everything. When I got good grades, it was, "Oh, that's nice, son." And that was it. Looking back, I should have seen that this was going to escalate eventually. But when you're a kid, you just accept that's how things are, I guess. Things got worse when we reached adolescence. Mia could literally do whatever she wanted without consequences, like coming home at 3 in the morning at 15 years old, and my parents would just tell her to be more careful next time, while I had a strict curfew at 10, even when I was already 17. If Mia needed money to go out with her friends, my parents would give it to her without asking. I had to get my first job at 14 because they wanted me to learn the value of money, as if Mia didn't need to learn the same thing. The truth is, I stopped asking them for things from a very young age because it was simply easier to do everything on my own than to put up with constant comparisons with my sister. When I turned 18, I moved away for college, got a part-time job, and basically became financially independent from that moment on. And it was the best decision I could have made because I finally had some peace of mind, away from all that toxic dynamic. Fast forward like 12 years later, I already have my career established, a decent apartment, savings, investments. Basically, I'm doing well in life because I worked really hard to get where I am. Mia, on the other hand, well, Mia never had to work hard for anything because my parents always rescued her from everything. She changed majors 3 times in college, never finished any of them, worked in several places, but never lasted more than a few months because, according to her, the bosses were horrible, or the environment was toxic, or whatever excuse she could come up with. My parents always paid her rent, her car, credit cards, everything. And I watched all this from afar, thinking, this is going to end badly eventually. But it wasn't my problem, so I didn't get involved. I kept minimal contact with my family, like occasional calls on birthdays and mandatory family gatherings at Christmas, nothing more. About 6 months ago, on a normal Tuesday, I was in my office reviewing some reports when my phone started ringing. It was my mom, which was already weird because she almost never called me directly. She usually just sent generic text messages in the family chat. I answered, and before I could say hello, she was already talking super fast and sounded desperate. She says, "Ethan, I need you to come to the house right now. It's an emergency with your sister." I obviously got worried, thinking she'd had an accident or something like that. I asked her what happened. Is she okay? And she says, yes, she's physically fine, but she has a very serious problem and we need your help. I told her I was at work, but that I could stop by after 6, and she gets hysterical, telling me no, that it had to be now, that it was urgent, that please, for once in my life, I should put my family first. So I left work early, drove like 40 minutes to my parents' house with my stomach in knots, thinking about what the hell could be so urgent. And when I get there, all 3 of them are sitting in the living room with super serious faces. Mia had swollen eyes like she'd been crying. My dad was quiet as always, looking at the floor, and my mom looked somewhere between furious and desperate. I sat down and asked them what was going on, and my mom drops the bomb. Your sister owes $40,000 to some very dangerous people, and we need you to help us pay them. I asked Mia how the hell she had accumulated that amount of money. And through tears, she tells me this story about how she met a guy like 2 years ago who supposedly was an investor, that he promised her that if she lent him money, he would invest it and double the amount in a few months, and that she kept lending him money little by little until reaching that figure using credit cards, personal loans, and apparently she even borrowed money from people she shouldn't have. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, Mia, that's obviously a scam. How could you fall for something like that? And she just cried, saying the guy seemed legit, that he had an office and everything, that other friends of hers had also invested. I asked her why she hadn't gone to the police, and my mom interrupts, saying they couldn't go to the police because some of the people Mia owed money to were, let's say, the type that don't handle things legally, basically illegal lenders or something like that. My mom then looks at me directly and says, You're the only one who has that money saved. We need you to lend it to your sister so she can pay before something bad happens to her. I honestly felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. I told them no, that I wasn't going to give her $40,000, that was basically my entire emergency fund and part of my savings for the down payment on a house I wanted to buy, and that, besides Mia, had to learn to deal with the consequences of her actions. My mom got hysterical, started yelling about how I could be so selfish, that she was my sister, that if something bad happened to her it would be my fault, that family helps each other, the whole emotional manipulation speech she'd used my whole life. My dad finally spoke and said, Ethan, your mom is right. We can't let something happen to your sister. You have the money and it won't hurt you as much as it will her. I told them no again, more firmly. And Mia started crying, saying I had always hated her, that I had never been a good brother, that how could I abandon her in the moment she needed me most. I got up to leave because I couldn't stand being there anymore, and my mom literally stood in the doorway blocking my exit, telling me she wasn't going to let me go until I promised to help my sister. I had to literally move her out of the way carefully to be able to leave. And as I was leaving, I heard my mom yelling that I was ungrateful, that she had given me everything in life and this is how I repaid her. And I just thought, gave me everything in life? Really? If she doesn't even remember my birthday half the time. I drove to my house shaking with pure adrenaline and anger, and honestly I thought that's where it would all end, that they were going to find another solution and leave me alone, but no. Things were just getting started. The next day, the messages started. First, it was my mom sending me super long texts about how I was disappointing her, how I could sleep at night knowing my sister was in danger, that what was I going to do if something bad happened to her. Then Mia started, sending me messages saying the people she owed were threatening her, that she was scared, that please, I should reconsider. Then cousins joined in. Uncles. Even family friends. I didn't even know, had my number, all basically saying the same thing, that it was my responsibility to help my sister, that family comes first, that I should be a better person. I blocked like 15 people in 2 days because I couldn't handle the constant harassment. About a week after all this, I got a call from the bank. It was from the fraud department telling me they had detected an unauthorized access attempt to my account. Someone had tried to transfer money using my personal information, but fortunately, the system detected it as suspicious and blocked the transaction. I asked them for more details, and they told me the attempt had been made from a computer registered at an address that, when I looked it up, turned out to be Mia's apartment. I couldn't believe it. My own sister had literally tried to rob me, and when I confronted her on the phone, she didn't even deny it. She told me through sobs that she was desperate, that she didn't know what else to do, that Mom had told her that if I wasn't going to help her voluntarily, then she had to find a way to get the money on her own, as if that justified trying to steal $40,000 from my account. I yelled at her. I was so furious I was shaking. I told her she was a thief, that she could have gone to prison for that. How dare she? And she just said she was sorry, but that I didn't understand the pressure she was under. I hung up the phone and immediately changed all my passwords, put additional alerts on my accounts, and even considered filing a police report, but in the end I didn't because, I don't know, I guess I still had that stupid feeling that I didn't want to completely ruin her life, even though she clearly had no problem ruining mine. 2 days after that, on a Saturday morning, I was in my apartment working out when the doorbell rang insistently. I opened the door, and there were my parents, unannounced, without calling first, nothing. They came in without me inviting them, and my mom started again with the drama, saying we needed to talk as a family, that this had gotten out of control, that I had to reconsider my decision. My dad, for the first time in his life, got firm with me and told me that either I helped my sister or they were going to disinherit me, that they weren't going to leave anything to someone who abandons their family in difficult times. I laughed. I literally laughed in his face. Because the inheritance? Really? As if I was waiting for something from them. As if I hadn't been financially independent since 18, precisely because I knew I could never count on them. I told them to leave my house, that they had no right to show up unannounced and make demands. And my mom started crying, saying I had changed, that I had become cold and heartless, that money had corrupted me. I exploded. I told them everything I had kept in for years, that they had always preferred Mia, that they had never treated me like a son but like an employee who had to fulfill his obligations but never received anything in return, that they had taught me to be independent because they were never there for me, and now they wanted me to financially rescue them from problems they themselves caused by spoiling my sister so much. My dad turned red with rage, yelled at me that I was ungrateful, that they had given me food and shelter for 18 years, and that I owed them much more than $40,000 for everything they had done for me. I told them to get out of my house or I would call the police, and they finally left. But not before my mom said I was going to regret this. That family never forgets. That someday I was going to need them, and they weren't going to be there. I thought after that things would calm down, but no, they got worse. About a week later, I received a certified letter from a lawyer. It was from my parents, basically a legal-sounding letter, saying there was a moral and potentially legal obligation for me to help my younger sister in situations of extreme need, and that if I didn't comply voluntarily, they would consider taking legal action. I took the letter to my own lawyer, who basically laughed and told me they had no case, that legally I had no obligation to give money to my adult sister, that this was pure theater to try to intimidate me. Still, he recommended that I document everything, all the messages, calls, fraud attempts, everything, in case things escalated further, and they escalated. I decided enough was enough. I blocked all my family members on my phone, on social media, everywhere, and sent them a final message saying I didn't want to hear from them anymore, that I was done with this whole situation, that they should stop contacting me or I would take legal action. Of course, this didn't stop them. They started calling me from unknown numbers, sending me letters to my apartment. Even some cousins showed up at my work one day asking for me, but I told the receptionist not to let them come up. The worst happened about a month after I cut contact. I was in an important meeting with clients in my office when the receptionist called me saying there was an emergency, that my mom was in the lobby causing a scene demanding to speak with me. I had to leave the meeting, went down to the lobby, and there she was, crying dramatically, with several of my coworkers and clients watching the scene, yelling that her son had abandoned her. How could I be so cruel? That she needed to talk to me urgently. I approached and told her quietly to leave, or I would call security. She started yelling louder, saying I was threatening her, that everyone should see what kind of son I was. I had to call security, and they escorted her out of the building while she kept yelling that I was a monster. I was mortified, literally mortified. I had to give explanations to my boss about the situation. Fortunately, he was understanding but told me he couldn't allow that kind of thing to happen again in the office because it affected the company's professional image. That same afternoon, I hired a lawyer and sent cease and desist letters to my entire family. To my parents, to Mia, to the uncles and cousins who had been harassing me, basically telling them that if they contacted me again or showed up at my work or home, I would take legal action for harassment. I also put a temporary restraining order against my mom, specifically for the incident at my work. After that, finally, everything calmed down. The harassment stopped, the messages stopped, the letters stopped, everything. It was like they had finally understood I was serious. The first days of silence were weird, honestly, because after months of constant harassment, suddenly having nothing was almost unsettling, but little by little I started to feel lighter, like an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It's been about 6 months since all that. Mia apparently found some way to deal with her debts. I don't know exactly how because I'm not interested in knowing. But I heard from an aunt, the only family member who stayed neutral in all this, and who still talks to me, that my parents sold their second car and took out a loan on their house to help her pay. Which honestly, is ironic because that's exactly what they should have done from the beginning instead of trying to force me. According to my aunt, my mom is going around telling everyone that I'm a horrible son who abandoned his family, that I'm selfish and heartless, basically painting me as the villain of the story. And you know what? I don't care. Let them think what they want. My life has honestly improved so much since I cut contact. I got a promotion at work 2 months ago. I'm dating someone new who is amazing and who understands the whole situation without judging me. I have more peace of mind than I've had in years. Sometimes I feel guilty. I'm not going to lie. There are moments when I think, should I have helped them? Am I really a bad son? But then I remember everything that happened. The lifelong favoritism, the theft attempt, the harassment, the public humiliation at my work, and I realize I made the right decision. You can't help people who don't want to help themselves, and you can't maintain a relationship with people who only see you as an ATM. Last week, my aunt told me Mia is still without stable work, that she's still living with my parents' financial help at 27 years old, and that apparently she's still blaming me for all her problems, saying that if I had been a better brother, none of this would have happened. And you know what? Let her think whatever she wants to. I made my life, built my career, learned to be responsible and self-sufficient, all without her help or my parents. And I'm proud of that. I don't need validation from people who never valued me to feel good about myself. Sometimes you realize that the best family is the one you choose, not the one you got by blood, and I'm at peace with that.